My name's Francis Miller. I'm the directing conservator of Conserve Art. We're based in Hamden, Connecticut, and we specialize in the treatment of historic sculpture, monuments, and cemeteries. I fell in love with colonial burying grounds as I traveled east. I grew up out in California, and the further I migrated across the country, there was more and more history. And when I came to New England, these old burying grounds are just phenomenal. I discovered this rich history that I didn't know about, but these burying grounds are filled with amazing artworks, carvings that really solidify the history of the country. They're amazing places and in need of a lot of care. So what we're doing here is we're taking a pretty well-rounded preservation approach. So I've gone through and did an assessment of a certain section of this cemetery, and I'm writing up a preservation plan for the entire site and counting every stone here in the cemetery and delineating whether or not it's marble, slate, granite, if it's a headstone, monument, footstone, or other marker. So we have an idea of the stone types and the condition that they're in, whether they're leaning, fallen, buried, broken. And today we're going to have a workshop where the community is going to come in and help out with resetting and cleaning. And so having a base count per section now of every stone type that had fallen or in disrepair, when we go through this workshop, we'll be able to quantify per section like how much work we can get done in a day with the community help. So that's kind of cool. And then we can give that information back to the state because they provided I think a matching grant for this project. And so we can report back and say, with your funds, we were able to not only repair certain markers that they had a budget for, but the community came in and we're able to reset and clean X percentage of markers in the site. So it'll be a good day, I hope. I hope the turnout's good. The workshop's really going to be focused mostly on resetting and cleaning. The cleaning is going to be very safe. A lot of people have a notion that you can go out and just simply scrub these old grave markers, but many of them were 300 years old or more. And so they can be pretty fragile. And so I'm going to teach a very safe method, which is using an antimicrobial agent that'll kill the stuff so you don't have to scrub it. So I'm going to try and get people to get their hands off some of these older objects and teach them what they can safely have hands-on scrubbing with. And then the biggest problem are markers that simply lean and fall, and when they fall they break. And so it's to keep them plumb and in line. The other issue is if they start leaning too much, the mowers, you can imagine the lawnmower maintenance of the cemetery. I mean, these guys do this every day, right? During the week. They must be exhausted by the end of the day, hot summer days. And so for them to keep their wits about them and not have any contact with the stone is a challenge. And my hat's off to them, because most cemeteries are in pretty good shape. Markers get hit now and then, but it's to be expected, right? So, but if a marker is leaning and this, big machine's coming in a little close, they're more likely to clip it, right? So it's like really good to get things straight up, so even maintenance is better off. But then the other issue are trees that fall and break markers. Other issues, vandalism. There's always some vandalism. We had an African-American gravestone here that was covered with tar, and we removed that. It happened to be a Revolutionary War veteran on top of that. So we were really happy that we got all of that material off the stone. But it's there are a handful of issues here. I mean, more than that. The amount of issues you run into in a historic cemetery will challenge any preservation project of a building tenfold, because there's such a diversity of stone types and monument types in one small site. I understand, and it's great that the community has taken an interest again in cemetery preservation. It's happening across the country. I'm on the board of directors for the Association of Gravestone Studies. So we travel and we have annual meetings across the country and teach people how to safely approach maintenance of cemeteries and do light treatment. But that's a big issue, that people have this notion that they can go out with like bleach and these scrub brushes and they can actually damage stone. As I said, like, some of these markers are 300 years old, and so if you start scrubbing too much and lose these little grains on marble, or start scratching slate, which is very chemical resistant and often looks pristine, and with a hard bristle brush, you can suddenly start to add scratches and deform the carving. So it's a matter of education to get people to stand back, and also to realize, well, these things don't have to look like a military cemetery. That was something that was introduced, my hunch is like in the mid 20th century, where these historic military cemeteries had to look spotless. And these old burying grounds never looked that way. Maybe when the first stone went in, for the first 3 years after a stone was buried, but believe me, families weren't coming in and cleaning markers on any regular basis. But I mean, that said, there is a need for it. If the organic growth covers a marker and you can no longer read it, and you can no longer read all the historic information, family, deservingly so, have the right, and it's a good thing to clean them off so that they can be read and be legible again. And if there's a lot of growth, it can cause damage to the stone. So the good thing is that now that they've developed some of these chemical solutions that simply kill the growth, we can avoid that whole scrubbing issue and people using bleach to kill it. These new solutions are really fantastic.
Natasha Stopper here today for Exeter TV 98, and we are at the Winter Street Cemetery for a lovely restoration project that's going on. And I'm here with Tim. He's volunteering today. And why did you choose to come out and help and volunteer today?
Well, I lived overseas for almost about half my life. Lived over in Thailand, but I grew up in this area.
Where in Thailand did you live?
Bangkok.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so which is a big city,
Yes.
and moving back, and I just got into it because it's part of this is the oldest part of the country, so it's really something a lot of people take for granted. You're not going to see these types of graves out on the West Coast. And as you get into it, you learn more and more about the iconography and the different stones that they used and all of that. So it's just a nice way to preserve our past.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for coming out and volunteering today. We
Okay.
appreciate it, Exeter, and thanks so much for talking with me as well.
Okay.
Pretty big variety of stone types here, even within a single stone set or type of a marble. We got a big variety of marbles, like really fine grained marbles that are almost limestone, really rough grain, large grain marbles, medium grain marbles. There's a nice gray marble here too. And different organic growths like different stones, like they hold different moisture in different way. They have different minerals that those little plants love to host in. A lot of the marble markers are translucent stones. Bacteria will actually get down into the stone grains and actually grow behind the stone surface. So if people go just to scrub a stone, the only way you can scrub out that is if you actually remove the stone grains. And so you'll see people scrubbing away on some markers and rinsing and scrubbing. And if you'll notice, you can go up and look, at the bottom of the stone often will be a pile of little, looks like somebody poured sugar down there. Well, those are stone crystals that were just scrubbed off the stone. And so these aged markers and the slate markers, the slates are really interesting in that they're extremely chemical resistant. They resist acid rain really well. And so you have these beautiful hard surfaces that do host some materials, but they're deceivingly fragile. I could take just the lightest little pebble or something and scratch this, and it'll be permanently etch these stones. So you can imagine coming in with a heavy brush and scrubbing these out. You might get lucky if your bristle picks up a little bit of dirt. You're probably going to cause little tiny scratch swirls in it. And over the decades, you actually might be doing some long-term damage to the stone. You might do a lot of immediate damage too, but you always have to look down the road. If these stones have held up their carving for, in some cases, over 200 years, where you can still see these fine score lines for aligning their text, and we're coming over here and scrubbing the heck out of them to get rid of growth, well, that might not be the best long-term solution for this. So one thing that we do now and really promote for colonial era and fragile markers is simply to use an antimicrobial agent. It's an ammonium compound that kills the growth, and don't scrub it at all, and then you let Mother Nature rinse it. A little hail helps too, but wind, rain, and over the course of about a year it gets pretty darn clean compared to what it was before. It will not get as pristine clean as, let's say, a military cemetery, but we're not in a military cemetery, and that was kind of a really very hard-handed imposition that they've taken on, and it's quite a maintenance schedule they have as well. But even the military cemeteries, the VA now uses this same cleaning agent that we're using here. The same compound by a different company. I have one that's called Revive, and there's another called D2, but they both use this quaternary ammonium compound just to kill the growths. And no scrubbing is needed. So even if you can get the VA to change course, it works. And you have to be patient. Now for granite markers or stones, brand new marble, where there's not really a threat of a fragile surface, you can still use water and even this solution and scrub it out with a bristle brush. It's not advised to use like wire brushes. That will definitely scratch stone. I could use a wire brush on marble and I'll scrub it, and I'd end up with a white paste, and I'm just simply pulverizing the stone with the wire. You never want to do that. Always use a soft bristle brush, plastic or a natural, like Tampico brushes are really great. But for the most part on these older stones, we're simply going to spray on this solution, keep it damp for about 10 minutes, and do a very quick rinse, and that's it. We're going to leave a couple markers untreated. We'll take photographs. In fact, I'll do it before I start on a nice section where we'll designate the marker that's going to be used as a standard before cleaning. Well, maybe even I'll get a trash bag or something, cover it, so make sure we don't clean it. So that over the course of the time, like later this fall, people are going to be coming back and saying, that material didn't do anything. They'll be back in the spring and say, well, that material hasn't done anything. Well, the after summer, it's like, well, maybe. But if you have that standard and say, well, that's where we started, you'll probably be surprised at how much cleaning is actually happening. Yeah. So it's pretty cost effective too. You can go a long way with this material without any scrubbing, get a lot of work done in a short time. So let me show you. I'll just do one piece of this marble here, and in the slate, it does have some fragile areas. Some of this stuff can actually some will come off almost with your fingers. But that stuff, after this cleaning solution's put on and kills it, this stuff is going to come right off. It won't be an issue at all. So I'll demonstrate that, and then we'll find a granite piece. I'll just use this post here from the family plot, and I'll do a demonstration on how to just scrub out growth on a piece of granite. So right behind us, I wear safety gloves. I have safety glasses as well. It's great to work in teams. This material is sprayed on. We're mixing it 1 part solution from the container to 5 parts water. They just changed their standards It used to be 10 parts water. Now they're saying, well, if you have heavy growth, you have to make it more concentrated. So I just doubled the solution level.
Okay, Francis, you have more workers coming right up behind you.
Okay.
PEA kid.
Oh, awesome.
How you guys?
Good. How are you?
We're getting a demonstration on cleaning. You're just in time.
Perfect.
So, yeah, it's sprayed on. It has to stay damp for about 10 minutes. Unfortunately, I was hoping we'd have a cloudier day today for a little while. It's looking cleaning because these are going to evaporate pretty quickly. The slates get pretty warm in the sun. But the whole idea is simply to spray it. Make sure you get all side surfaces. This material is actually developed from hospitals. They used to use it for killing germs, scrubbing the floors and walls in hospitals. It kills little organisms, bacteria. And that's it. It just has to stay damp for 10 minutes. And so I'm going to keep an eye on that. If somebody has a phone, they can keep a. And I'm going to come over to this marker here and treat it, a marble.
Okay.
So I'm trying to keep it on the stone. I'm not being just totally. I'm not going to waste a ton of time and be really meticulous about overspray. If there were some other chemical that might cause damage to the markers that I didn't want to have sprayed, I'd have to cover them with plastic bags to keep it off the stone. And then that's it. This guy's already starting to dry out a little bit. And so if you work in teams, one person can start working down a row and then somebody can kind of follow to keep it damp. And we'll have we have about 10 bottles each, 10 bottles of water, 10 bottles for the solution. And so after it dwells for 10 minutes, we can just give it a quick water rinse. It's actually not even required, it's recommended, but often I actually don't. These materials have been tested by the National Park Service at the National Center for Preservation Training and Technology, and found out that they're darn safe to use on almost every stone type. I think in one test there was some minor trace of a salt detected, but it was so minor that it wasn't even of consequence. But so really safe and well tested. And that's it for cleaning. Except after 10 minutes, and then we'll just a little rinse. And the rinse is the same process, and it's just a really very basic rinse, very minor.
How long will it take for the lynches to die?
In about a year, it'll look much cleaner. They'll die quicker, but they're attached.
Right.
Yeah.
So no scrubbing.
No scrubbing.
Just put it on, rinse, and let Mother Nature do it.
Mother Nature.
With the combination.
Saves a lot of. And the marbles. And the marbles actually get a little cleaner if you have an area with a lot of acid rain, because then the acid rain starts to clean it a little bit too. Whereas the acid rain doesn't really affect the slate as much as the marble. Yeah, no, bleach was really common to use, and I can't say it's just, I can't say it just was wrong. It wasn't. I mean, there were some problems with bleach, and sometimes it yellows some marbles, and it actually causes a little bit of a stain. And you can have chlorides in the stone that you don't really want either. They make that's a sodium hypochlorite, but they make calcium hypochlorite, which is a calcium-based bleach, which is safer to use than typically bleach.
because of the metal pins that they had, you know, they
Yeah.
turn it blue. and
Yeah, cause a lot of corrosion. Yeah. So I'm just gonna keep it. And if somebody has their thing going, so the slates are going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt. The growth is actually staying damper. I could see that. So even though the slate surface dries a tiny bit, this is working.
Can we go get some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. And then what we'll do is we'll start in a real organized pattern. We'll start at the back of the cemetery, and then clean each stone in a row, and just start moving forward.
Okay.
And I'll help mix it.
Welcome, I'm Julie Gilman, Selectman here in Exeter, and I'd like to show you a little bit about the project that we're doing out at Winter Street Cemetery. I'm going to tell you first how it came to be funded. The first part was we had a member of the Exeter Heritage Commission whose mission is to protect, educate, and document the heritage of the town of Exeter. This woman came to the town after joining the Daughters of the American Revolution and came to the cemetery to look for her ancestor, saw the conditions of the monuments and the excuse me, the gradings of the graves, and said something should be done about this. This deserves better protection. So with her help and background information, we applied for a grant from the Land and Community Heritage Investment Program, or LCHIP, for a grant to do this work, this hands-on kind of work that other grants don't give money for. So we applied for it, and unfortunately, our friend from the Heritage Commission, Bonnie Flythe, died before we applied, and didn't know that we had applied and that we got accepted. So we were awarded $13,000 for this project, which will complete about a quarter of the 500 pieces of work we have here. We applied, sent for an RFP and hired a consultant that does this kind of work, and he's proceeded to mark out the stones that volunteers can help us work with, which will provide for more of the cemetery being worked on than if we just had the consultant do it by itself. So we're here on October 14th doing the work. We have volunteers. We're setting stones and finding stones, and it's a great project. Somebody else, perhaps Pam Jedham, will be speaking to you about the history of the cemetery and why this is so important. After this work is done, the Heritage Commission intends to apply for National Registry of Historic Places. It's already on the state registry, but we think we'd better get it into good shape to be a proud picture of Exeter to be put on the National Register. So come on down and visit it. You'll see work that's been done and compare it to the work that hasn't been done. I think it will be easy for you to detect which is which. And thank you very much.
Hi there, I'm Pam Jedham. I'm with the Heritage Commission, and I'm in the Winter Street Cemetery where we're having a work day. And this is the first really big Exeter cemetery, as opposed to just burying people in a family lot out back, or also they would try to bury them around near the church because that gave you sort of a head start on Resurrection Day. Daniel Gilman gave this land to the town as a real cemetery back in the 1700s, and a lot of revolutionary people, war heroes, are in here. Nathaniel Gilman is here, Jeremiah Smith is here, and over in that section down there where the black veterans were buried. And I don't know if you've heard of the Paul family or Jude Hall, they're all down there. And so we've had everybody in Exeter basically for just about 100 years, when the place got pretty well filled up and they built the new cemetery, which is down on Linden Street. And so when people say they want the new cemetery, that's the 1850 cemetery. So we're working here. What we're doing right now is looking for gravestones that are kind of tilted like this and setting them back up. What we're also doing is looking for broken pieces and having a giant jigsaw puzzle. So here we are trying to recreate the cemetery, and please come down and see what we're doing and visit the people here. The DAR is here. They do decorate the graves of the veterans, even if Revolutionary War veterans count. So if you see a gravestone with a little flag decal out front, the DAR put it there. And the DAR is here. The Interact Club is here from the high school with their senior Rotary members. The Key Club is here with their Kiwanis members, such as myself, and plus people who just saw the article in the newspaper and said, gee, I want to help work on that cemetery. So, thank you very much.